So today would be our last school mass, except for the graduation. So I'm just going to imagine that we're all filled here with the kids on the last Wednesday school mass of the year. And as we get ready to go to summer, I want to ask the kids, do you know what virtue is? You know what it is to live a life of virtue? Because we heard from today's first reading, it's from Paul's letter to Timothy. Now, Timothy was a young person who Paul had a special connection to, he really liked, he really appreciated, who Timothy's life spoke to Paul. And he's encouraging Timothy. And he's like, don't let anybody look down on you because of your youth, but be an example. And don't believe for a moment that you're not called to live a holy life. All of us are. And so work for that, Timothy. And it's just this really encouraging letter that he writes to Timothy. And so how can I not think of all of you today? Whether you're graduating from 8th grade or you're just going up to the next grade, but you have a chance to make a difference. And so I ask you again, do you know what virtue is? Now I'm going to rat somebody out, one of our 8th graders. When you guys were in 4th grade, I came into your class because you didn't know the virtues very well. I mean, you were really good at saying, this is the virtue of honesty. This is the virtue of trustworthiness. This is the virtue of friendliness. This is the virtue of obedience. And you could name off all of them. And you knew about the virtues pretty good. In fact, I was teaching a college class at the time, and you knew it way better than the collegians. And so I was bragging to them about you. But I still didn't think that you knew what a virtue was. And your teacher asked me to come into your room because actually you guys were having a hard time being respectful of one another and respectful of the teachers. Now, I'm not ratting out and saying this class is a bad class or anything like that. All of us are hearing this for ourselves, right? Every single one of us, whether we're in pre-K, first, second, third, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, or beyond, we all can say the right things sometimes, but don't know how. And as we were kind of sorting through, like, what really is a virtue? You guys, again, really good. You told me it's a good habit. I said, okay, well then what's the opposite of a virtue? If you don't know what a good habit is, then that's not going to really helpful. So what's the opposite? And they said a bad habit. And I'm like, and what do we call that? And you said a vice. A vice is something that we do that's bad, that's always going to lead us to be less than we can be. A vice is something that's going to make all of our actions kind of negative, and it's going to allow a bad or an evil in the world because we choose vice. And if we do a virtue once or we do a vice once, is that a habit? No, it's not, because it's something you got to do over and over again. And I'm like, all right, so guys, what is a virtue? And we're just really struggling to get out of this intellectual place. We had to understand it intellectually, but how can I live this virtue? And finally, and here's who I'm going to rat out, Ryan Davis, from the back of the class. I said, so what's a virtue? Why would anybody do a virtue? And Ryan just says, well, Father, why wouldn't you? You nailed it, Ryan. And I hope you're still nailing it, not just in your head, but in your heart and the way you live your life. And I hope that's the way for all of us, especially our young people. There's a virtue. Why wouldn't you do the good thing? Of course, why wouldn't you? And when we're finally at that point, we know we're growing in virtue. I don't want to be so arrogant to say that I've arrived at all my virtues, and I hope none of us ever really get there. But when we're saying, why wouldn't I do the right thing? That's when we know we're living a virtuous life. But now, as you're going off into summer, well, I haven't got to see you in person for a long time. Anyways, but there's going to be less connection with the school, no more digital learning for a while at least. Yeah. And what will you do? What will you do? There's going to be the temptation just to sit around and not do anything around the house because you don't have to. And you're not going to try to go out because you can't do anything outside. There's going to be temptation to maybe be snotty with your parents or rude to your siblings. There's going to be a chance just to do nothing when you could have done something that made things better. What will you choose? You're all going to have to make that choice. And unfortunately, there's something else. There are vices out there. And there are people who are doing vicious things. And that's in the news a lot. And that's what's going to be coming in if you watch anything on social media. It's going to be coming into your eyes and your ears. What will you do? Will you get caught up in that? Will you still do the right thing because it's right? Will you still do the right thing because why wouldn't you? And if all of us do that, brothers and sisters, that changes things. That doesn't just change. If it's truly a virtue, it doesn't just change one action. What does it do? It changes a culture. And if we have a culture of living virtue, then bad stuff happens way less. And good people become way more. And then we get to see the good news of the world. The best of what people can do, not the worst of what people can do. So, St. Rose School, at our last school mass, and I'm going to have a special message for the graduates next Tuesday at their graduation mass at 8:30. Do you know what a virtue is? And I can't hear you right now, even if you're saying it from your screens. But what I'm going to ask you to do is show me that you know what a virtue is. And not just the school kids. So adults, could we take a little ownership here too? Could we be the ones that show exceptional virtue? That is, maybe learn about some of the virtues that you don't know. If you can't list off 7, then you don't know the key ones. If you can't list off 50 some, then you don't know most of the virtues. Maybe take a little bit of time to learn each virtue, but be those witnesses and speak by the way you live your life of virtue, because we are called to that life of holiness. You are placed on the world at this particular time to be a light. And we don't have to live in the darkness. So how do we live virtue? One choice at a time. I'm going to follow Jesus right now. I'm going to do what he says, to love him with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and my neighbor as myself. And I'm going to do it in the way that is creative to me, because I'm going to be given unique situations. And I'm going to, with great virtue, do the good thing and all these things that school never could have prepared me for. I'm going to be able to do them because I know Jesus and I've chosen to live a life of virtue. You do that, we'll live in a much happier, more beautiful world.